Welcome to Become a Conflict Guru, Module 7, Perspectives. Welcome to the perspective section. The meanings we place on things can change while the underlying facts stay the same. It's all a matter of our perspectives. Perspectives are the filters to start our meaning-making machine. Perspectives can set the regressive cycle or progressive cycle in motion. It's our choice. So a conflict guru chooses perspectives that support positive possibilities. As Abraham Lincoln once said, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. This is the classic glass half full or glass half empty concept. I'm going to show you now a quick visual exercise that I'll do with a group. I encourage you to stand up and follow along with my directions. Okay, we're going to do an exercise, and it's called a ceiling clock exercise. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up and imagine, if I stood in front of this, imagine a clock is on my chest, and you know what clockwise is, and you know what counterclockwise is. If you looked at the ceiling, you'd see a clock, and you could follow the second hand and know what clockwise is. And the same way, if you're looking at the floor, you'd see a clock and know what counterclockwise is. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up, and I'm going to ask you to point at the ceiling clock and have you start going in a clockwise position. And no matter where I ask you to look, keep your fingers pointed at the ceiling. No matter if you put your hands down here or they're going to be keep going in the same direction once you go clockwise. Okay? Please stand up and push back so you can see the floor in front of you. So look at the ceiling clock and put your finger pointing the ceiling and start going in a clockwise direction. Everyone going clockwise? Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. Keep going that way. Move your hand just above your face. Still going clockwise? Keep it going. Now move your hand down near your waist and look at the floor at the clock. Which direction are you going?
What? Wow.
Wait a minute. What the?
Wait a minute.
This is trickery.
So we're going clockwise,
Wait.
You're moving your hand, still looking, keeping your finger pointed at the ceiling, and look at the clock at the floor, and now you're going counterclockwise.
What in the hell?
We're being manipulated.
How's that even?
So what?
That's tripping me out.
You're still going the same direction. What changed? Your perspective. And when you shift your perspective, your whole world can shift. Because it's a matter of your perspective, and it's something you create in your head, your perspective.
What?
If you think someone's an idiot and a jerk, how will you probably treat them? Like an idiot and a jerk. But if you think, oh, they're just clueless and they just need a bit more information, how will you treat them? Like sharing information.
Like a person.
Like a person.
Yeah.
And it's your perspective will determine your feelings and define your outcomes. As you saw in the clock exercise, when you take a different perspective, your whole world can shift from clockwise to counterclockwise, simply by taking a different perspective. For many of us, it's a matter of being willing to be curious instead of stubborn about our one perspective. Perspective is a choice. Since your goal is to become a conflict guru, I'm going to frame perspective in terms of connection with others or disconnection from them. Choosing a perspective of connection begins with conscious curiosity. Relating well to others involves an openness to exploration and discovery, a commitment to support and encouragement, and the ability to empathize with others' feelings and needs, even when they are different than yours. A perspective of disconnection begins with reptilian reactions, comes from a place of defensiveness and knowing, accompanied by a tendency to complain, blame, or judge others. Those who want to connect with others will make requests of them, while those that disconnect from others will make demands. When you are able to see a situation or behavior from a different perspective, like watching a person behave terribly and seeing their action as a way to meet their need, or seeing someone expressing anger and knowing that the reason they are angry is that a need of theirs hasn't been met, like keeping agreements or trying to contribute to a project when they've been excluded, you are much more likely to approach the situation and the behavior from a more reasonable and rational mindset, rather than just react negatively toward them. Bottom line is, you are either focusing on the conflict and disconnecting from them, or focusing on the need and connecting with them. Since perspective is a choice, you can make that choice at any time during a conflict to help you and the other person revitalize your relationship and elevate the results you get together. Let me show you what I mean in a visual depiction. Beginning with a situation or some stimulus, we filter it through our perspective, the lens through which we view the world. This is our first opportunity to make a choice. Is it going to be for connection or disconnection? This single choice sets the stage for the multitude of meanings we are going to make up about the situation and the person. When you focus on connection, it's much easier to make up meanings that support your relationship and keep you in the progressive cycle. When you focus on disconnection, it's super easy to make up meanings accordingly, landing you in the regressive cycle. As I've said before, where focus goes, energy flows. Remember the exercise we did earlier on meaning making? My neighbor's dog pooped in my yard. We can take any situation and put a positive or negative spin on it, building connection or tearing it apart. There's really no limit to what we can make up about a few simple facts. You have a choice which perspective you choose, so be careful to choose one that will serve you, your relationships, and the results you most want in your life. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. I have always appreciated this quote by Henry Ford because it is applicable to so many areas of life and touches on the power of our perspective. I mention it now because I think some people get stuck questioning their ability to actually choose their perspective. It's just our human nature, right? You can't change that. I guess I would have to agree somewhat with this. You may not be able to change your nature or your worldview overnight. What determines the perspectives and subsequent meanings you assign, well, that's your perspective of events or experiences that have happened in the past become filters for things that happen to you in the present. We're constantly bringing our past into our present in a way that can greatly influence our future. Remember Viktor Frankl's quote? Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. What I'm suggesting is that in each choice you make, you can nurture your nature. You create your meanings, so if you consistently choose meanings that support your desired outcome, you will gradually shift your overarching perspective and worldview as well. Going back to Henry Ford's quote, your perspective affects your belief about what's possible in your life and what's not. So if your perspective is, I can, you will likely feel encouraged and at least try. If your perspective is, I can't, you will likely feel discouraged and probably won't even give it an attempt. It's your choice what perspective you choose to use. I like to say in my consulting and coaching practice, You get to say how your life goes. What are you saying? The perspective you are choosing will create your life. Your perspective will generate your meanings, initiate your feelings, and ultimately decide your actions and outcomes. You get to say what feelings you have and what actions you take through the perspectives you choose. If you want to change your future, change the way you look at your past and how you relate to it in the present. We all learn from our past, but let's not have it create our future for us. Envision the future you want and then live in the present in a way that supports that end. When you're able to shift your perspective through curiosity, your interpretation of the situation will change, and so will your feelings and ultimately your actions. The health of your relationships and how effectively you interact, whether you're trying to build a rocket ship or just get a date, is partly predicated on your perspective of others and the situation you find yourself in. If you think of someone as an idiot and a jerk, you'll probably treat them as an idiot and a jerk. If, however, you think of them as just not being clued in and somewhat naive, then you might take the time to educate them and clue them in on what's going on. Your perspective is going to generate the meanings you place on things, while the underlying facts stay the same. Perspectives are the trigger points to starting your meaning-making machine. So consider what outcome you want and then choose a perspective that supports that outcome. So let's take a simple example of how perspectives affect outcomes. You've been having difficulty with a coworker. It seems that every interaction turns into a conflict and creates upset with you and among your whole department. So now let's take that example and that situation in your life and do this exercise. If this example doesn't work for you, go ahead and make up a different scenario. It doesn't matter which one, just make one up. Do this exercise by taking a perspective that drives disconnection and create negative meanings about it. Then do the same with a perspective that supports connection and creates some positive meanings that will include some curiosity involved with it. When I say positive and negative, I don't mean good or bad. It's just a comparison of the tone of the meanings. Like this works for me and this doesn't work for me. Now go ahead and pause the video, let your imagination run wild, write down some of your negative perspective and meanings and positive perspective and meanings, and then we'll debrief it together when you restart the video. If you spend some time considering the example I gave you, that you've been having difficulty with a coworker, it seems that every interaction turns into a conflict and creates upset with you and among your whole department, then you might have come up with meanings such as this. Your coworker is a drama queen and thrives on the conflict she can generate. It's a way for her to feel powerful, to create havoc and disruption wherever she goes. She must have something hanging over my boss's head for him not to fire her. My teammates and I are going to have to do extra work around in order to make up for her not doing her work. I'm going to have to find a new job because I just can't stand working in this environment anymore. Wow, if you came up with those negative perspectives and meanings, who would want to be working with this person? No one. So let's exclude them from contributing to the group and limit the conflict they create in the group. This is the classic fight, flight, or freeze reptilian reaction to judge them and exclude them. This will keep the conflict in motion and put you in the regressive cycle. As you can see, these are statements and they come from a place of knowing rather than curiosity. So let's take perspective that support connection. You might have come up with these meanings, like, she must not have worked in a team setting like this and doesn't quite know how to interact. I wonder what I could do to shift my interactions with my coworker to create a different environment. Maybe she's going through a hard time at home or with her family and expressing it at work. Our team didn't get off on the right foot. Maybe we should do some team building exercises. I know she's really smart. We just aren't communicating well. I've seen her work well with my boss, so I know that the situation could be better between us and in our department. These meanings are certainly more positive and curious, which will generally promote possibilities and create more positive feelings, connecting us to others and keeping us in the progressive cycle. Remember the statistic I shared with you that 75% of employees believe that going through a conflict resulted in positive outcomes that could not have come about otherwise? Conflict is going to show up in your life, at work, at home, out shopping, when you're on vacation. So use it to your advantage to create a more positive and curious approach to life. Here's a different perspective of conflict that you may not have thought about before. Have you stayed with the conflict long enough to discover what it came there to teach you? Now, I don't mean something like, yeah, that guy is really a jerk, or when in conflict, it's better to just keep my mouth shut. I mean that rather than something to avoid, conflict can often be a catalyst for creativity. Maybe a conflict in the workplace made you realize that you weren't the only smart person in the company, and you could learn from people who have more experience. Or the argument with your best friend led to you understanding that he has a strong need for acceptance, and your comments about his family's traditions really hurt his feelings. Seeing through the conflict to the underlying needs that are not being met can refocus attention to where something can be done, be changed, or be stopped, leading to stronger relationships and getting better results. Learning not to judge, blame, and complain about others, which creates conflict and disconnection in my life, was a big learning for me. This learning led me instead to ask questions in order to learn, grow, and understand others, which created connection with them. This makes the space between the stimulus and response safe and respectful. This is the biggest learning of my life that came from all the conflict and drama I had experienced. It led me to become an executive coach and lead interventions with executive teams at companies around the country. Several years ago, I was asked by the executive director of the EPA on the West Coast if I would work with her compliance team that was disintegrating before her eyes. Each member of the team had expressed an unwillingness to work with the current supervisor and had put in for a transfer to other departments. The supervisor himself had put in for a transfer from San Francisco to Dallas. Upset and anger was the norm in this team, and Kathleen, the executive director, committed to doing something about it. When she was interviewing me, she said, "Hayden, can you create miracles?" Although I did not commit to creating a miracle, I did commit to creating a very different work environment for this team moving forward. I was hired, and the very first thing I did was interview each member of the team. It soon became apparent that they each held a pretty negative perspective, not only of the supervisor, but of the team, and a firm belief that nothing could be done to change it. I soon met with them in San Francisco and walked them through a 1.5-day intervention process. By the end of the first day, information was shared by everyone that affected their perspectives of the supervisor, including the trauma the supervisor was going through at home concerning his child's health and the possible divorce he and his wife might be going through. The anger and upset he was spewing on the team was an expression of the frustration and fear he was experiencing at home that he wasn't dealing with very well. Once this was brought out in the team intervention, other members shared some of their struggles that they were going through the other members of the team didn't know about. Their willingness to share this vulnerable information with each other softened their hearts. Tears were shed, and individuals stood up to hug each other. A transformation of the team took place. On day 2, they put together agreements that they would operate moving forward to show each other respect and create a safe work environment so that the individuals would feel free to express what was going on with them and get the support and encouragement they needed from each other. By the end of our time together, after everyone had left, Kathleen, who had watched the entire process, met with me and she said, "Hayden, a miracle certainly did take place during our time together. All that I did was create a safe and respectful environment so that each member of the team could honestly express what was going on with them, not only at work, but in their home lives." What the team discovered was that they were each human beings, that they had trouble separating what was going on at home with at work, and they committed to encourage each other and to support each other in the challenges they were going through, not only at work, but at home.
Your key to better outcomes is to choose curiosity. Being curious about your perspective will help you identify if you have one of connection or disconnection from the person you are in conflict with. Having one of connection will automatically and immediately lead you to better outcomes. Remember, your perspective will determine your feelings and define your actions, putting you into one cycle or the other. Please refer to your personal challenge to define the perspective you have about the other person and whether you have a perspective of connection or disconnection.
Have you ever heard someone say, "There's only one way to look at this"? This person is holding themselves and the situation back by staying stuck on one perspective. When we're able to see both positive and negative perspectives and then create different meanings, we have increased our emotional intelligence and are on our way to become a genius by having the ability to look at 10 things where the ordinary man sees one. Doing this will give us new choices, ones that may enhance our lives instead of inhibit our lives.